Hello and welcome to my space here. Today I am just going to be talking a little bit about the mind and body connection, which would be like our subconscious, and then the body-earth connection, which is a connection to your nervous system through connecting to the earth through energy practices, through different intentions. So basically what I want to share with you today is how I've gone from feeling very anxiously attached to feeling really secure within my body, and where this anxious attachment stems from, and how it really affects our nervous system and can make us feel really dysregulated or disconnected, and you can feel really abandoned, you can feel really alone. And basically I want to share with you how you can kind of recognize these signs within yourself, or recognize these signs and these patterns within your relationships. Especially because I want to talk about how this anxious attachment that's formed in early childhood can really deeply and profoundly impact your adult intimate relationships, and can cause a lot of fears of intimacy, fears of being seen and heard, and we can tend to sacrifice ourselves for love. And one of the things that happens when we feel really disconnected and our nervous system is dysregulated, and our nervous system is formed at an early age, from probably about 3 or 4 years old, maybe even sooner for some, depending on the type of environment that you grew up in. So the environment that we grew up in is going to shape and mold our nervous system, and how our nervous system has been shaped and molded is literally how we will perceive the world. So if it's been very dysregulated and it stems from this profound feeling of instability. So if you have low self-esteem, or you really struggle to feel secure within yourself, feeling really deeply connected to your body, feeling very deeply connected to your spirit and your passions and your purpose, feeling deeply connected to your sense of identity, your sexuality, for example, or and remember that another thing I want to mention here is that your sexuality, your creativity, and your spirituality, your creativity, and your sexuality are all one. So there's so much shame around our sexuality, which actually causes so much shame around our spirituality and our creativity. And when we begin to realize that they're all the same, they're just different facets, that we reconnect, right? And when we reconnect to our creativity, when we reconnect to our spirituality, when we reconnect to our sexuality, and your sexuality is just that, it's that connection to your body and knowing what makes you feel good, what makes you feel secure, what makes you feel safe, what makes you feel pleasurable. And then when you're in relationships, you can communicate those boundaries in a much more assertive way. You can communicate them in a way that's confident, which allows for you to feel really strong from the inside out. So if you have suffered from being walked all over in relationships, or you feel emotionally abused in relationships, or emotionally neglected, or if you don't feel seen or heard, or if you don't feel supported emotionally, if you looking at what you're playing out in your relationships, in your adult intimate relationships, that you actually formed a very unhealthy relationship with one of your caregivers in early childhood. So it's really important because it's kind of all intertwined, the inner child healing, regulating your nervous system. And one of the ways that you do regulate your nervous system is reconnecting with your inner child. And your inner child is your emotions, it's your heart. And our heart sometimes, because of our environments and growing up with maybe here's some examples. If you grew up in households where there was poverty, or there wasn't a lot of money, if you grew up in households where there was domestic violence, if you grew up in homes where there was an alcoholic parent, or a parent that was on drugs, or a parent that was disabled, or a parent that was in and out, just very unstable, right? This will all create inner stability, it will all create this dysregulation and this very deep sense of insecurity on the inside. So, and what happens a lot of times in relationships, for example, if you are, for me, I grew up in a household where there was domestic violence, and this made me feel really unsafe. And there was just a lot of, my parents weren't just unstable. I had a stable home, I had food on the table, and these are false ideas of what stability is. But what I'm trying to teach you here is how to see it kind of from a child's perspective, and how you can create, your children aren't necessarily looking to the outside to feel security. What they're doing is looking to you. So your children will sense your own mental, like if you're if you're mentally unstable, and mentally unstable is not something to be shamed or like you're a bad parent. If you're mentally unstable, you're a bad parent. That's completely wrong, and that's judgmental. That's not true. But anxiety is a form of, feeling mentally unstable, and your children will feel your anxiety, and it will bring them out of their natural high vibration. In order for them to connect with you, they will have to become anxious, because it's the way they can relate to you, because you can't see them when they're full of joy, or you can't see them when they're really happy, or they're peaceful, or they're like content. You only give them validation when they're behaving in a certain way, or if they're like having a tantrum to get your attention, or having some kind of creating some sort of scene so that they can kind of get your attention, right? So looking at it from the child's perspective, like creating that sense of connection, they can feel when you're very anxious. Or the other spectrum, they can feel when you're emotionally unstable, right? And emotionally unstable is like depression. So, you can still be a good parent and struggle with mental health and emotional health. But what is important is that you're addressing it. And if you don't admit that you are struggling with these things, you're struggling to feel secure within yourself, you're struggling to feel strong, you're struggling to feel worthy and valuable, you're struggling to, find a sense of yourself, or feel really fulfilled, or feel happy, and then a lot of times our children will learn how to have like anxious attachments, and will form really strong attachments to our parents, because we feel this deep need to kind of heal them, to make them happy if they're really depressed and sad. And we'll completely sacrifice ourselves and abandon our true selves in order to please our parents, in order to I know I had this really deep need to make my parents happy, and I could tell as a child that they were deeply unhappy, that they were lonely, that they were sad, but they would pretend, they would put on a mask, and that's how you learn as a child to grow up and put on a mask and pretend that you're happy and everything's okay, when deep inside you're feeling completely disconnected, you're feeling all alone, you're feeling abandoned, you feel like nobody fucking loves you, and you're suffering with all these things inside, but on the outside you're like, no, I'm happy, I'm good, I have all these things externally, yep, I have the relationship, and I have all the cute things, and I have all the things in my house that I want, but still there's something missing, and there's something lacking within yourself. We can all put on a show, we can all put on a mask, that's, a lot of us were taught to do that, but really coming back to your true self, what makes me feel really happy, and stop relying on our partners or our children to make us feel happy, or to make us feel at peace, or to make us feel loved, right? And when we can create that for ourselves by creating that connection to our bodies, our connection to our passions, which would be our, sexuality, what are your desires? What would really make you feel connected to yourself? What would make you feel the most true to you? And start doing those things, right? Because a lot of times we're taught to do different things in order to please our parents, and not do the things that we truly actually love, and that bring us a sense of happiness and fulfillment that we're truly seeking from the outside world. We seek it in money, we seek it in how much we have in our bank account, we seek it in relationships, and we seek it in just so many different ways. In business, especially or being seen with the internet, so it's really important to kind of create that validation, to create that inner security, that inner support for yourself. And it's really the process of reparenting. That's kind of the process I'm talking about here. And I have been reparenting myself for a really long time, and I love it, because that's the best part about reparenting yourself as an adult, is that it makes you a better parent. It prepares you, if you haven't had children like me, it's preparing me to be a better mother, It's preparing me how to take care of my children, and how to take care of myself, so that I can be the best person to take care of my children, and not neglecting myself, in order, and then putting all my happiness and all my fulfillment onto this one little aspect of my life, and really allowing myself to explore all different facets of things that make me feel happy, even if they're completely contradicting or different, and allowing myself to move outside my comfort zone. I was, you have to try doing different things in order to create this sense of fulfillment and happiness within yourself. And it can be small things, it doesn't have to be giant gargantuan things. It's taking little steps in every single moment. And I'm going to give you a little mindfulness practice here at the end of this little discussion on how to kind of just constantly kind of come back to your, I want to help you create a baseline of peace and connection. And one way you can do that is by connecting with your breath. So I'll just give you a little a little technique and a little tool to help you create that inner security whenever you're feeling really anxious, and just watch yourself, kind of observe yourself when, in self-observation. That's why I'm obsessed with meditation, is because it helped me to kind of study myself, and I love observing my patterns and my behaviors and how, like, watching how you behave in relationship, and then think, hey, why did I do that? Why did I behave in that way? Like, get curious, that's the best part. That's the inner child meeting the shadow. So, like, your inner child looks at, like, a beast and it can befriend it, because through the eyes of innocence you can see the innocence in another. You can see through the eyes of love, you see the love in another. Even in the darkness you can see, even when people are awful and terrible to us, can we still see the love? And how can we do that? By connecting with the love within ourselves. And then we stop seeking love and validation in the external world, and we no longer have to put it on, like, these expectations. And then when this person, like, let's say our partner, doesn't meet our needs and is struggling maybe with their own mental health or their own emotional health, and they're feeling disconnected and they can't connect to us, instead of us feeling abandoned, that's the anxious attachment playing out. So, like, what would happen is, like, okay, especially if you attract emotionally unavailable men, like, hello, one thing that you're going to have to look at within yourself is where you are emotionally unavailable. So that's your shadow. Where can you look at, okay, where am I not creating happiness or joy for myself? Where do I feel really, noticing when you're wallowing in self-pity and then bringing yourself out of those moments by doing something, directing your energy in a way that's going to build you up. Like, what are things that you can do that are going to make you feel good about yourself, that are going to make you feel really connected to yourself? Like, whether it's drawing, or it's going out for a run, or where it's playing an instrument, where whatever it is, where it's writing something, like, where can you, every time you find yourself getting kind of down, I'm not saying don't feel your emotions, definitely feel them, but then how can you do something after you're feeling really sad, after you have an hour or two of crying on the couch, instead of, like, binge watching TV and binge eating, how can you do something like get on your yoga mat and, make yourself feel really good? How can you draw yourself a bath and relax in there? Maybe you could go and read a book, or you could, like, make something with your hands. Maybe it's jewelry, maybe it's a delicious meal, whatever it is, like, doing things instead of, like, wallowing and, like, feeling bad for yourself. How can you get up and say, okay, I'm going to create connection for myself. I'm going to create peace for myself. I need some love right now, so I'm going to create some love for myself. I'm feeling really turned on right now, so I need to get myself lit, like, pleasuring yourself. In whatever way that is, like, pleasuring your senses, rather than what we've been taught to do through our society, which is to harm our senses or to abuse our senses, right? And then we, seek pleasure because we're abusing our senses. We seek it in outside things in order to kind of, because a lot of us feel very, like, if you're feeling disconnected, one thing that I've struggled with is that I just felt numb. So this can affect your sex drive. This can affect your taste buds. You can have, like, no appetite. You can have, like, you just feel numb. You feel, because you're disconnecting, and that's okay. That's a coping mechanism. It's a way that you learn how to adapt emotionally to a very unstable environment, whether you experience any kind of trauma to the physical body. That's any kind of trauma, sexual trauma, physical trauma, verbal trauma, like, anywhere that you were abused. And you have to remember that your nervous system remembers everything, even if your mind blocked it out, because, your mind is intelligent like that, and it can block things out when it's experiencing something that can't be comprehended, or that's overwhelming your senses, or that's, like, creating any sort of insecurity or unsafety whatsoever, So it will block it out, and that helps you, right? It helps you adapt and cope and survive in that moment when you're in that flight or freeze moment. That's when your mind is, is helping you, right? But later on, when we don't regulate ourselves, we don't, like, our nervous system can kind of drive our unconscious behaviors, and it, that's when we become reliant on different things to make us feel safe, because we don't feel safe inside. So how can you create inner security? By coming back to your breath. So let's go ahead and just, if you're still with me here, we can go ahead and just do a little practice of sitting up nice and tall, shoulders down and back, and engaging the core, so you feel really, and, like, forming that connection, especially with your physical body through health. Like, forming a connection with your core is going to be the biggest, most important thing, especially if you struggle with, like, feeling very insecure, or, like, you have that anxious attachment, or you're feeling, like, very, because it's just like your power center, right? And it's what holds us up. It's our center. So, finding that kind of, How can every moment you come back to your center and kind of anchor yourself here? Because a lot of times, especially if we have trauma and our nervous system is dysregulated, we're going to start to live from the mind. And the mind, remember, is very limited, and the mind is kind of a trap. And so you can create anxiety, right? So if you struggle with anxiety, I know the feeling. Sometimes I'll know when I'm feeling very like hypervigilant, or I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling a little insecure or unsafe with it. And we can pick up on this in the collective, right? So a lot of people right now are feeling very unstable. There's so much up in the air. There's so much uncertainty, right? And we can pick up on that energy from, if a mass amount of people are feeling it, we can pick it up and we can hold on to it like it's ours, and it makes us feel like we're carrying the fucking weight of the world around, right? So learning how to place boundaries to that mass consciousness, which would be like, disconnecting from your phone, like having energetic practices that create boundaries that allow for you to kind of create like a shield and a protection around yourself, a meditation routine that helps you maybe bring yourself down to your center and down to your core, so that you can allow yourself to live from the inside out, rather than, somebody's telling me to live this way, and we're constantly being absorbed. Everybody's telling you how to live a certain way from social media, like every which way. You're being bombarded by noise. And people literally, and this is so funny, but I see people sitting in front of the TV, like eating their dinner, like, and literally just like taking in everything the news is saying as complete truth. And a lot of us, we haven't been taught to kind of question the things that we're being absorbed to all the time, and they're really, they induce a lot of fear. So please shut off your TV, shut off the news for a whole fucking weekend. Shut off your phone, shut off any notifications that tell you anything about what's happening on the external world, and come inward. And then we let go, because the mind is going to see separation, the mind is going to see judgment, and when you're living from the mind, it's going to make you feel tired and worn out and burnt out. So please, when you come back in here, come back to this beautiful, beautiful body of yours. And that's one of the greatest practices. Bring your hands to your body. Right now, wherever you are, I don't care where you are, put them on your hands, put them on your legs, your thighs, maybe just rub your hands together, or maybe give yourself a hug. There are so many just random modalities that kind of just bring you back. If you're in the middle of a conversation, you find yourself starting to get nervous and anxious, how can you bring yourself back to your breath? Maybe just take a deep breath, or, and it doesn't have to be obvious, or you don't need to always kind of like just observe yourself, right? Just give yourself some grace, give yourself compassion, come back to your breath, breathe. Making sure, and just come back to your core, and you're kind of just coming back. It's just a practice of you might find yourself drifting away. How can you pull yourself back? And then you drift away, especially if you have a very active imagination and your mind is like your playground. That's okay. That's great to have a mind like that. The only thing is when we have minds like that and you're very imaginative and you're very creative and you're very intuitive, you can also suffer from things like panic attacks or, anxiety attacks, and feeling very disconnected. It's like you have to ground yourself. If you're very intuitive, if you're very sensitive, and you're feeling emotionally unstable and you're just crying and you can't, and then you're feeling angry and then, and you can't find that balance, come back to your body. You have to find that ground. Come back to the earth. How can you go for a walk? How can you connect with plants? How can you eat earth foods, So that's the earth, the body earth connection is how can you ground? You have to incorporate a very because to me the earth is the body. So, it's connecting to a very physical aspect of ourselves, and that's more of our masculine energy. So if you notice you're in your emotions a lot and you're feeling very emotionally unstable, you need to incorporate more of your divine masculine, which creates peace and stability. So how can you connect to the earth? How can you connect to your body? If you're feeling very anxious and you're feeling very disconnected from your heart space, and you're worrying or you're ruminating. I'm getting a lot of people are ruminating over the past right now, and rumination is when you constantly replay scenarios and past scenarios, life scenarios in your mind on repeat all day long. This could be memories from childhood. This could be conversations you have with somebody, and you could just play them over and over again. And you could think about how you could have said something so differently or how you could have handled something so differently, and that's called rumination. And that's, you're focused too much on the past. That's when you can start to feel very depressed and sad or feeling very regretful or remorseful. How can you bring yourself back to the present moment and create that connection to your heart space? How can you create love? how can you create peace, right? And you just want to find that peace. So every time you wander to the future and you're anticipating and you're anxiously, so if you're hypervigilant, one way in your relationships that you might notice that this plays out is you might not trust your partner very much, and you might constantly want to check in with them. You might want to constantly text them, or you might want to, like when they are around you, you feel really happy and you feel really excited, but as soon as they leave, then you're feeling very like low, you're feeling depressed, you're feeling sad. Or if you're like constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, or like you have fears of them cheating on you, or you have fears of them like betraying you, those are a lot of times when that's actually a wound that was created in early childhood that is asking you to create inner security. So then you're not projecting that onto your partner, and once you begin to trust yourself and feel really secure within yourself, you're going to feel really secure about the people you're attracting into your life, right? And they're going to mirror that to you. They're going to mirror that same inner security, and they're going to trust you as well. So we can have a lot of like betrayal wounds that can keep us from being in our heart space. And when we are learning how to come back to our hearts, and our hearts have been broken in the past, then it's going to cause a lot of it's going to be just not going to be very comfortable to sit here and to deal with the pain and the trauma that you've blocked out, or that you've just stored in your nervous system. So be really gentle with yourself, be very careful with yourself, be nice to yourself. And just like I like to just create a cozy spot, like I said, even like this, or just on my bedroom floor listening to gentle music. I like to do some yoga. I love to get outside and go for a walk, or I like to write or draw. There's just lots of different things that you can do. Have fun, play. I love to sing and dance in my room like a child. Seriously, it's so fun, and it's a great way to clear your energy and to raise your vibration. And you're going to feel those moments of sadness and despair. You're going to have those moments of fear and doubt and insecurity and guilt and shame. You're going to have those. That's part of the human experience. Hello, welcome to being a human, where you get to experience all the emotions, and stop denying certain ones, because in order to, feel the great ones, we have to feel the really dark ones, and we wouldn't know the great ones if it wasn't for the awful ones, right? And don't label your emotions as these emotions are good ones and these emotions are bad ones. No. These emotions all just are as they are, accept them as they are. You don't have to put them in boxes. But notice how we've kind of been put in boxes, and your mind loves to label and try to understand this human experience, but it's really not very you can't really understand it. It's not meant to be understood, and a lot of us come here and we think that we're meant to be understood, and we can really struggle to feel seen and heard. But once you start, showing up for yourself, and you start providing those things for yourself that make you feel good about yourself, you no longer need to be seen or heard by anything externally, as long as you're seeing and hearing yourself, and you're like, okay, I hear you, I see you, and I'm going to take action. I hear you. This is what you need in order to feel good. This is what you need in order to feel secure. I'm going to take action for you, and like just doing it for yourself, right? So it can be really challenging to just be here in the present moment. But that's where literally, that's where you get creative control over your future, right? So your presence is like a bridge to your future. So a lot of times when we're feeling really anxious, it's because we don't know what's happening, or we're like, we don't know where we're going to end up, or we don't know where this is going, especially in the beginning of relationships. Sometimes you can be like, or even in the middle of relationships, where is this relationship going? It can feel like this relationship you don't know, and it can make you feel very anxious about where it's gonna go, and instead of overthinking, right, coming back to that center, coming back to presence, and using that presence as a bridge to create happiness, to create joy. Because if that's what you want to experience in the future, you're going to want to create that feeling in the now. That's our creative power. That's how we co-create with the universe. So if we want creative control over our future, the key is presence. You have to come back here. So you can, even just by putting your hands on your body at any place. I remember like when I would first begin to meditate, and I would just be in conversations with my friends or my coworkers, and I would notice myself drifting off and like, what am I going to say next? Or like feeling like this person was judging me. I would bring my hand Like I would feel what my hand was on, like maybe on the counter, was the counter really cold, or maybe my hand was on my leg or it was on my arm, could I feel the hair on my arm, like coming back to the present moment so that I could feel really, anchored to myself, and then respond from a place of openness, right? Because a lot of times when we're hyper vigilant and we struggle with things with, like anxious attachment, we'll become really guarded and we're really protecting ourselves, that, that defensiveness, that growliness, that bitchiness, that like meanness, that hardness, because that's not a woman's natural state, to be hard and cold and mean. It's not. Her natural state is like, trust and ease and peace, it's presence, it's it's fluidity. Can she have really strong emotions? And when I say she, I mean everyone. Yes, we can experience those, but it's not natural for us to feel really guarded. Anyone, if you're a man or a woman, to feel so guarded that you have to like bite people's heads off, right? And that's just a sign that you're really disconnected from your heart. And when we disconnect from our heart, it's for a reason. Like I'm saying, it's protecting ourselves from a time when we felt vulnerable and we got hurt, right? So creating that connection to your heart space, even just come here. So this is a great practice too. Bring your hands to your heart. Whenever you find yourself kind of feeling insecure, just notice one thing I want you to notice with if you're feeling kind of insecure, if you struggle with self-worth and things like that, if you're hunching over, or if your shoulders are rolled. Every time you notice that about yourself, bring yourself back up, engage your core, connect with your core, and just, feel your hand on your chest, your heart beating in your chest. Even if this is just like a 5-minute break you take, like in your car on your lunch break, right? Just bringing your hands to your chest for 5 minutes, focusing on your breath. Inhaling through the nose and exhaling out the mouth slowly and with control. And just taking these little practices with you. Even, okay, so you wouldn't have to do this, but okay, here's one of the things I find myself doing. I wear a necklace often, so if I'm in the line at the grocery store, right? And when you're at the grocery store, man, and you start to become very like aware of your own energy, you'll feel the energy just walking into busy places like that, and it'll feel like, think of being at the checkout line and people are kind of pushy and they're in a hurry and they're in a rush, and this can make you can feel people's energy and you can start to pick up on it. So one way I anchor myself when I'm just in the grocery line is I come back to my breath and nobody knows, I'm just standing there, but sometimes I'll bring my hand to my necklace and that's kind of putting it right here on my heart, So you don't always have to bring your hands to your heart, but like I said, when you're feeling kind of anxious or you're feeling kind of pushy, another great time when you're in the car, driving, can you, is your mind wandering to the future? Like, what are you going to do when you get home? Like, you're thinking of 100 different things while you're in the car. How can you come back every time you stop at a stoplight? Place your hand maybe on your chest really quick and take a deep breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. And those little practices will add up and add up and add up and add up, because that's the whole purpose to life, in my opinion, is just becoming more and more and more and more present, because that's where the future is created, is in the present moment. So a lot of times we think we have no control, we feel so out of control and powerless, and then that can make us feel like a victim and like powerless and helpless to change our lives. And it's like, no, we have complete creative control, and that happens in the present moment. So I hope those little practices can help you come back to the present moment so you can create some inner security, some inner peace for yourselves, and you can come back to that baseline of connection every time you're feeling disconnected. What can you do to bring it back to peace, back to the present moment, back to your body, back to the earth, so that you feel really strong and secure and stable from the inside out. So I'm sending you so much love. I hope you have a wonderful week and take care, and I'll see you next time.